Vannini, theathletic.com, does an incredible job of covering college football. Earlier today, we had Max Olson on. There's so much going on, including the breaking news with Baylor, with Ron Roberts out, defensive coordinator Ronnie Wheat, safeties and special teams coach out as well. Chris, I mean, it seemed like it was a time when you had the transfer portal, you had NIL, you had this. Now there's coaching changes, transfer portal, conference championship games, college football expansion. How much more can we get? This is kind of fun in a lot of ways.
Well, it all keeps getting kind of squashed into a shorter period of time. Coaching changes, coaching searches used to take 2 months. They used to get fired after their bowl game. Like that's what it used to be like. And then you had the winter dead period put into place, and then you wanted to get your coach in by the end of the year. Then we had the early signing period. You wanted to get your coach in before Christmas. And now we've got the transfer windows where now you want to get your coach in before this year. It's December 5th. And that means stuff that's all happening during conference championship week. It's all happening so quickly and in such a short period of time because the calendar of college sports makes no sense if you compare it to any other professional sport out there. It's just the way the sport has kind of been built.
Chris, do you see that as an area where, as all these changes are occurring, that's something that they work on trying to, spread out a little bit more, if at all possible?
Well, they should. They're not. I mean, things just keep moving up quicker and quicker. It's not going to, because now the transfer portal is like the biggest thing. And so and kids rightfully are going to want to be able to leave as soon as the season ends. So now you've kind of got that happening. And it's never made any sense. A lot of these schools, they're hiring the highest paid person in their state, and they're making these decisions based on a few weeks of interviews and information. Like, no normal business would operate like this, but that's just sports is. It's not a normal business.
Chris, you write a lot of columns about, when a coach gets fired, who the best replacements are. They're really excellent. It looks at, trying to piece that together, which is hard to do, knowing who's available and all that. But do you feel like even more pressure, like I better get this out quickly because I don't know how fast or slow this search could go?
Yes, especially this year, because we knew that a lot of these schools were going to try to hire by the end of the week. Texas State probably has their coach by today or tomorrow, and they fired their coach on Sunday. So that's just kind of, you got to get these things turned around quickly. You got to talk to people who have kind of been around it and the names that they believe are in the mix or could be in the mix. And a lot of it's not just throwing on names. It's trying to find fits. Like I don't write just, hey, here's 10 guys who might work here. It's, let's look at the job. What do they pay? What are the facilities like? What have they hired in the past? What is the athletic director's background? What are the things that will factor into how this search plays out? And then here are the names that fit in that. So that takes research and talking to people and stuff like that. And I try to make that stand out more than your typical just thrown together candidates list.
Chris, I've seen some back and forth with some of the columns or stories written about the Rose Bowl finally saying, okay, we understand, and the college football playoff expanding. What are your thoughts about the first round, and do you feel like that the playoff should also include campus sites more friendly to the fans or students in the second round as well?
Yes, because it's just the neutral environments are going to be stale, and they're going to be even more stale if you're playing in 3 or 4 of them in a given postseason, from your conference championship game to your quarterfinal, semifinal, final. That's a lot of travel for fans. That's very difficult. And it's just not as fun. It's more fun when we do these things on campus. And it's interesting that, we had Bill Hancock, the director of the CFP today, and he was asked, is it possible in 2026 and beyond, when the new playoff contract is created, could there be quarterfinals, not just the first round? And he kind of left the door open. It's unlikely because the relationship these people have with the Bulls, and they don't want them to go away and whatnot, your Fiestas, your Oranges, and what have you. But he left the door open for the possibility. And I think when 2024 and 2025 happen, when we have those first on-campus with a really fun environment, maybe the weather is going to be a factor for one of the teams. Maybe an SEC team goes up to a Big Ten team in the winter. and we like it and fans really enjoy it, that could change the dynamic of possible future decisions. It's unlikely, again, kind of the Bulls, they have these long relationships, but once we get the games on campus and see them, I think everybody's going to be clamoring for more of that.
You had a piece that dropped a little while ago on The Athletic that I enjoyed reading here between breaks about the expanded playoff, and you pose as the argument for why it is going to be, good for college football and will be better than a lot of the naysayers who don't like the idea of expansion. And certainly everybody's got 8 would have been better or 12 would have been better. But from your point of view, and folks still need to go and read your article, can you kind of summarize your vantage point on the expanded playoff?
Well, the thing I wrote today is specifically about conference championship weekend. And going into this weekend, only 2 games will impact the playoffs. The Pac-12 championship, whether or not USC wins, and the Big 12 championship, whether or not TCU wins. Michigan's in, win or lose. Georgia's in, win or lose. That's not very exciting. And so when we have the 12-team playoff, and you're going to have the top 4 teams fighting to get a bye, they don't want to lose that game because they want to get the bye. They want to avoid the first-round bye. You'll have other teams that are fighting to get into that playoff spot. They might need to win to get in. You'll have the group of 5, 1 or 2 of those championship games will have a playoff spot on the line. Like if Tulane versus UCF this weekend was for a playoff spot, there's just going to be so much more on the line. The conference championship games are going to feel so much bigger once we get to a 12-team playoff. And that in turn makes the regular season feel like a bigger deal because getting to your conference championship matters. If you're Purdue, if you're North Carolina, if you're LSU, you're playing for a conference championship this weekend. That's important, but that's it. That's where it ends. Like the idea that you could win that game and get into the playoffs is going to make these games so much bigger. And that's what I think something we don't think about enough with the 12-team playoffs. It will make more regular season games matter. It will make conference championship games matter. And that's not the case this year.
Yeah, Chris, I think I'll be more excited than I've ever been for kind of a random number 14 versus number 19 matchup, the third week in November, because number 19 now really, really, really needs that game, and so does number 14.
Right. And that's why I think 12 is the sweet spot. I don't want it to get any bigger. I know there's going to be surely a push when you can get more money, but I like 12 because that keeps everybody with something to play for. To be able to get a first-round bye, to not have to play that first week is going to be huge. It's going to be massive. And then it's going to create the stakes in a different way that we don't have now. I like the idea of 8. It made sense to me. You guarantee 6 spots. You do 2 wild cards. I liked it. But the SEC was never going to agree to that. And so given that, I think 12 is the perfect number for that. It keeps the conference championships matter. It keeps the regular season mattering. Any more than that, and then you really do start to water it down.
Chris, you guys do a great job of covering the carousel, and there's obviously been a lot of moving parts. I mean, today alone, looking at Tom Herman taking the FAU job and still more to come. What has stood out to you, good, bad, or ugly, as far as any particular job, any particular hire movement at this point?
Well, nothing's been particularly surprising at this point. Matt Rule coming back to college, going to Nebraska, it makes sense. Luke Fickell taking a Big Ten job, it makes sense. Tom Herman going down to Florida, he was in the mix at USF as well. So, it kind of makes sense. Nothing has really been surprising, except that's not true. There's one thing that has been surprising, and that is UAB hiring Trent Dilfer to be its head coach, from being a TV analyst to a high school coach to now a college coach. That one was a surprise. That was an extremely strange search that played out for a long period of time. Lots of names came and went. Some people weren't interested in the job that they thought would be. And eventually Trent Dilfer talked his way into the job because he's a very good talker. And we'll see if that works out. But other than that, nothing really surprising yet. Hugh Freeze Auburn, not a surprise. That was a name from the very beginning that was going to be in the job. Now, there always is a big surprise. We'll get maybe somebody going to the NFL. We'll get somebody fired unexpectedly because something happened that we didn't know about. Every single cycle always has a late surprise, and I'm still waiting on that to happen.
Chris, if I want you to finish the sentence, Deion Sanders will be the head coach at blank.
He has the offer at Colorado, but the fact that he hasn't taken the offer, I think, tells you kind of what the situation is, and frankly, makes Colorado look kind of bad that it's just kind of hanging out there. So I'm gonna say Jackson State, unless something else surprising opens. I don't think he really wants Colorado, because if he did, he would have taken it. And he might be in the mix at USF. He either was or still is. That's not clear. I think he'd kill it at USF. That'd be a great spot. But we'll see on that. And then people want Deion in Cincinnati. I don't really see a fit there, but it is possible. But I don't know. Maybe Deion's waiting for the bigger jobs, and he'd rather keep winning at Jackson State.
I could definitely see him using that to his advantage another year at Jackson State and really rev it up some more. Like, yeah, I turned down the Power Fives, and use that to his advantage to raise that profile even more if that's even possible. Chris, you did mention Cincinnati. Any feel for that job? Is obviously it's a key turning point in that program. Not only losing a guy like Fickle, but now getting ready to enter Big 12 play. Any, like I said, feel for what's going on there?
Well, I asked the AD, John Cunningham, on Sunday kind of what the criteria was that he wanted, and he said recruiting prowess. That is one of the most important things. He wants to find somebody with a strong recruiting background. And one of the first names that came to mind was Brian Hartline, the wide receivers coach at Ohio State, the former player there who has been one of the best recruiters in the country. Well, Hartline tweeted today that he appreciates any interest for jobs, but his heart is at Ohio State right now. So it appears he is not going to Cincinnati. So at that point, I don't know. It could go a few different ways. I'm curious if Matt Campbell's interested in the job. Toledo's Jason Candle's kind of up and down, kind of his run. I think Vince Marrow, the Kentucky assistant's interested in the job. That one's going to be tough because that AED, John Cunningham, he keeps things very close to the vest. Things do not really leak out of there. And he's shown he can go outside the box to make a hire. He hired 38-year-old coach from UNC Greensboro to be the basketball coach last year, who had no real connections to Ohio. So that's one that it could happen at any moment. It could be anybody, really. That's going to be a really tough one to gauge.
I'll leave you with this. Were you surprised? I mean, obviously we're based here in Waco. Were you surprised to see Dave Aranda cut ties with Ron Roberts after the success last year?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, Dave obviously showed the ability after the first year to make quick changes if he felt like he needed to. This was not a great season for Baylor to drop from top 10 defense to outside the top 50. I think generally they were. So not totally a surprise. It's a fickle business, and one bad year can kind of do you in.
Thank you, Chris. Great stuff, and appreciate you jumping on with us with such short notice today. But really, as always, great insight from you. We appreciate it. Chris Vannini, theathletic.com. He's written an article about the conference championship weekend, about the college football playoff expansion, now that the Rose Bowl has said that they understand that they need to be open-minded, I guess is the best way to put it. It was tough. It's like somebody was mentioned about Ron